Hello, I'm Calvin Rhodes, and welcome to Men Savage.
My wife's phone lit up on the nightstand beside her sleeping head at 6:47 a.m. on a Tuesday morning in mid-May, and the first thing the screen displayed, in the cool blue light of an unknown contact's incoming message, was the question that would unmake the previous 21 years of my marriage in the time it took me to read 7 words. The question was, did he leave for work yet? I was sitting on my side of the bed when the phone lit up. I had been awake for 31 minutes. I had been awake because I had not slept well the previous 3 nights, and because I had been planning, since approximately 6:16 a.m., to go downstairs and make coffee and read the previous Sunday's Charlotte Observer at the kitchen table before my wife woke up. Our 16-year-old son Crew had spent the previous night at a teammate's house in Ballantine before an early lacrosse practice, which meant that the house, for the first Tuesday morning in several months, would be quiet until I left for work. I had not yet stood up from the edge of the bed. I was holding my own phone in my left hand. I was watching, in the dim morning light of our bedroom, the second screen, the one that had lit up on my wife's nightstand, display a notification that did not require me to unlock the phone to read it. I had not been looking for it. I had not, in 21 years of marriage, been the kind of man who looked at his wife's phone for any reason. I had been raised by a father who had taught me, before I had been old enough to understand what he was actually teaching me, that a marriage in which one spouse needed to look at the other spouse's phone was a marriage that had already ended. My marriage had, as far as I had known until 6:47 a.m. that Tuesday morning in mid-May, not ended. My wife was named Adrienne. She was 44 years old. She was a self-described boutique marketing consultant who had been running her own one-person consulting practice out of the small home office at the back of our house in a quiet residential neighborhood in South Charlotte for the previous 8 years. She had been earning, by her own report on our joint tax filings, approximately $140,000 per year doing this work. The work had involved, by her description, brand strategy consulting for small luxury retail clients in the Charlotte and Raleigh metropolitan areas. I had never met one of her clients. I had asked, over the years, whether she would like to host any of them for dinner at our house. She had told me, every time, that her clients preferred a strictly professional separation between their business engagements and her home life. I had believed her. I had believed her because I had loved her, and because I had been raised by the same father who had taught me not to look at my wife's phone, to extend trust to the people I had chosen to love until they gave me a specific reason not to. She had, until 6:47 a.m. that Tuesday morning, not given me a specific reason not to. A second message appeared on her screen at 6:48 a.m., 38 seconds after the first. The second message was longer. The second message said, "Babe, I can't stop thinking about the way you kissed me last night. Tell me when I can come over." I read the second message twice. I read it twice because I had been, in the 31 minutes I had been awake before 6:47 a.m., a man whose marriage had not ended. I had been, in the 38 seconds between the first message and the second, a man whose marriage might have been ending. I had been, in the moment after I had read the second message the first time, a man whose marriage had ended. I had read the second message the second time to confirm that the ending was, in fact, the ending I had thought it was, and to slow down the moment in which I would have to decide what kind of man I was going to be in the first hour of the rest of my life. My wife continued to sleep. She was sleeping on her left side, facing away from me, with her dark blonde hair fanned across the pillow and one of her hands tucked under her cheek, the way she had been sleeping for the previous 21 years of our marriage. I looked at her for approximately 15 seconds. I looked at her the way a man looks at a person he has been about to spend the rest of his life with, in the last few seconds before he understands that he is not going to be spending the rest of his life with her after all. I picked up her phone. She had used the same 6-digit unlock code for the previous 9 years. The code was the birthday of our daughter Saskia, who was now 19 years old and a sophomore at the University of North Carolina at Charlotte. I unlocked the phone. I opened the Messages app. I scrolled to the conversation with the unknown number. The conversation had begun, according to the timestamps on the messages, 29 months earlier. 29 months. The conversation contained, by my rough count as I scrolled, more than 4,000 messages. The most recent message before the two that had arrived that morning was from the previous evening at 11:14 p.m., and the message had said, "I love you. Drive safe. Tomorrow." I did not read any of the older messages. I did not need to read any of the older messages. I read the two new messages one more time. I typed a reply. I typed, "Come over. My husband's not home." I sent the message. I locked the phone. I placed the phone back on the nightstand, in the exact position it had been in when it had lit up. I stood up. I walked quietly to the bedroom door. I opened the bedroom door. I closed the bedroom door behind me. I walked downstairs to the kitchen. I made the coffee I had been planning to make. I sat down at the kitchen table. I waited. My name is Tate Bromley. I am 47 years old. I am, as of this Tuesday morning in mid-May of 2026, the co-founder and majority shareholder of a commercial construction firm in Charlotte, North Carolina, called Bromley and Holcomb General Contractors, which I started 22 years ago this past March with a man named Reginald Holcomb. Reginald Holcomb is 49 years old. He has been my business partner for the previous 22 years. He was the best man at my wedding to Adrian 21 years ago. He is the godfather of my daughter, Saskia. He has had Thanksgiving dinner at my house with his own wife, Vivian, and their 3 children on 18 of the previous 21 Thanksgivings. He has been since approximately my second year of college at the University of North Carolina, the closest male friend I have ever had. He was the man who had introduced me to Adrienne, the summer she turned 22 and I turned 25, at a 4th of July cookout at his parents' lake house outside Charlotte. He had been her friend before he had been mine. I had not known, until I sat down at my kitchen table at 6:54 a.m. that Tuesday morning to wait for whoever was about to come through my front door, that the friendship had been the kind of friendship that did not end when one of the 2 friends got married to somebody else. I had not known a great many things. I was about to find out a great many of them. The doorbell rang at 7:41 a.m. I had been sitting at the kitchen table for 47 minutes. I had drunk 1 cup of coffee. I had not made a second cup. I had not turned on the kitchen lights. I had not opened the Charlotte Observer. I had been sitting in the gray pre-dawn light of my own kitchen, with my hands wrapped around the empty coffee mug, and I had been thinking about my father, who had died 11 years earlier, and who had been the kind of man who had not, in 46 years of marriage to my mother, ever raised his voice at her in front of me or my brother. I had been thinking about him because the small, quiet part of me that was about to walk to the front door of my own house had needed, very badly, to remember that there were men in the world who knew how to do hard things without breaking themselves on the doing of them. I had been hoping I was that kind of man. I had not been certain. The doorbell rang a second time at 7:42 a.m. I stood up. I walked from the kitchen to the front foyer. I crossed the foyer to the front door. I looked through the small frosted glass window beside the door. I saw, on the front porch of my own house, in the gray morning light, the silhouette of a man whose silhouette I had seen on that exact porch on approximately 70 or 80 previous occasions over the previous 22 years. The silhouette was Reginald Holcomb. I opened the door. He was standing on the porch in jeans and a navy quarter-zip pullover that I had personally watched him put on in the changing room of a Brooks Brothers store in South Park Mall, approximately 3 years earlier, on a Saturday afternoon when he and I had been shopping for shirts before a business trip to Atlanta. He was holding a small white paper bag from a bakery on East Boulevard that Adrienne had been ordering pastries from for the previous decade. He was smiling. The smile dropped off his face in approximately 1.5 seconds. He looked at me. He looked past me, into the foyer, as if he were checking, very quickly, whether anybody else was about to walk up behind me. Nobody was about to walk up behind me. He looked back at me. He said, in a voice that was approximately a quarter octave higher than the voice he had been using for the previous 22 years of our friendship, "Tate?" I said, "Reginald." He said, I came to drop off some. Adrienne mentioned yesterday that she had been wanting," I said. "Reginald, she is upstairs asleep. She did not text you back this morning. I texted you back this morning." He stopped speaking. He stood on my front porch in his navy quarter-zip pullover, holding the small white paper bag, and he watched me with an expression that I had seen, over the previous 22 years of our friendship, on the faces of men who had just realized, in real time, that they had made a mistake of a kind that was not going to be recoverable. I had not seen the expression on Reginald's face before. I had seen it on the faces of his subcontractors when they had tried to overbill us on a project. I had seen it on the faces of insurance adjusters when they had been caught trying to deny a claim that they had been about to pay. I had not, in 22 years, seen it on Reginald's face. I had not, in 22 years, expected to. I said, very quietly, "Reginald, 29 months, is that correct?" He did not answer me. He looked down at the small white paper bag in his hand. He looked back up at me. He said, in the same quarter-octave higher voice, "Tate, I am so," I said. "Reginald, I am going to ask you to leave my porch. I am going to ask you to leave my porch right now. I am going to ask you to not come back to my house under any circumstance, for any reason, for the rest of your life. I am going to ask you to be at my office at 10 a.m. this morning, with our attorney Whitfield Karras, and with your personal attorney, whoever that is, because we are going to begin the process of dissolving our partnership today. Do you understand?" He nodded. He did not speak. He turned around. He walked off my front porch. He walked down my front walk to the silver BMW X5 that he had driven into my driveway, and he opened the driver's side door and he got in. He did not look back at the house. He backed out of my driveway. He drove away. I closed my front door at 7:46 a.m. on a Tuesday morning in mid-May of 2026. I locked the deadbolt. I walked back to the kitchen. I sat down at the kitchen table. I made my second cup of coffee. I waited for my wife to wake up. She woke up at 8:08 a.m., the way she had been waking up on Tuesday mornings for the previous 21 years, which was the sound of her bare feet on the hardwood floor of the upstairs hallway as she walked from our bedroom to the bathroom to brush her teeth. I heard her in the bathroom for approximately 6 minutes. I heard her walk back to our bedroom. I heard her open the closet and pick out the clothes she was going to wear that day. I heard her come downstairs. She walked into the kitchen. She was wearing dark jeans and a cream-colored sweater. She was holding her phone. She said, "Morning, you're up early." She had said the exact same sentence, "Morning, you're up early," to me on approximately 3,000 previous Tuesday mornings of our marriage, on the previous occasions when I had come downstairs before her on a weekday and started the coffee. It was the sentence she had been opening our Tuesday mornings with, every Tuesday morning, for the previous 21 years. The sentence had, until that Tuesday morning, been an affectionate small piece of household routine. The sentence had, at that Tuesday morning at 8:14 a.m., been the first lie of the day. I said, "Adrienne, sit down." She looked at me. She looked at the second mug of coffee on the table. She looked at my face. She sat down. I told her, in approximately 7 sentences, what had happened over the previous 81 minutes. I told her about the 2 texts. I told her about the reply I had sent. I told her about Reginald on the front porch. I told her about my conversation with Reginald. I told her about the meeting at my office at 10 a.m. I did not raise my voice. I did not throw anything. I did not call her any of the names that the small, quiet part of me had been preparing, over the previous 81 minutes, to call her if she pretended not to know what I was talking about. She did not pretend not to know. She started crying at approximately the 3rd sentence. She continued to cry through the 4th, 5th, 6th, and 7th sentences. She tried to reach for my hand across the kitchen table. I moved my hand off the table. She said, "Tate, Tate, please, I said, "Adrienne, I am not going to interrupt you. I am not going to argue with you. I am not going to ask you any questions about him. I am not going to ask you any questions about how it started, or when it started, or why it started, or how many of the 36 trips you took to Raleigh in the previous 29 months were actually for marketing consulting work. I am not asking those questions because I am not going to have answers to those questions changed in my head by anything you say to me at this kitchen table this morning. The answers are what they are. The answers are upstairs on your phone in 29 months of text messages that you forgot to delete." I paused. I said, "Adrienne, I am going to leave the house in approximately 12 minutes. I am going to be at the office until at least 5 p.m. today. I would like you to be out of this house with whatever you need for the next several days by the time I come home this evening. I am not asking you to move out permanently in 12 hours. I am asking you to give me one evening in my own house to figure out what happens next. Do you understand?" She nodded. She did not stop crying. I stood up. I rinsed my coffee mug in the kitchen sink. I placed the mug upside down on the drying rack. I walked upstairs to our bedroom. I changed into the suit I had been planning to wear to a project bid meeting that afternoon. I did not look at my wife's nightstand on the way out of the bedroom. I picked up my keys from the small dish on the entry table in the foyer. I drove to my office. I arrived at the office at 9:41 a.m. I called my attorney, Whitfield Karras, from the parking lot at 9:43 a.m. Whitfield had been my company's general counsel for the previous 15 years. He had also been, for the previous 9 years, my personal attorney. He was 61 years old. He had been a partner at a small Charlotte firm for the previous 34 years. He was the most trusted person in my professional life. I told him what had happened. I told him I was going to need him in my office at 10 a.m. I told him I was going to need him to bring his forensic accounting contact. He asked me whether I wanted him to bring his FBI contact. I told him I would think about it. I walked into my office at 9:57 a.m. Whitfield Karras walked in at 9:59 a.m. Reginald Holcomb did not arrive until 10:24 a.m. He arrived with a Charlotte family law attorney named Tabitha Crandall. Crandall is a common Charlotte legal name, whom I had not previously met. He was sweating through his navy quarter-zip pullover, which he had not changed out of. He sat down across from Whitfield and me at the small conference table in the corner of my office. He did not look at me. He looked at Whitfield. He said, "Whit, listen. I want to handle this in the most respectful way possible. I want to—" Whitfield interrupted him. Whitfield said, "Reginald, Tate has retained me to begin the process of dissolving Bromley and Holcomb General Contractors, effective immediately. Tate is the majority shareholder. He has the contractual right to initiate dissolution under the buy-sell agreement that you and he signed 16 years ago. The buy-sell provides for an independent forensic valuation of the business, conducted by a third-party accounting firm, with the proceeds of the dissolution divided according to the ownership ratios established in the operating agreement. Tate is invoking that provision today. He has also asked me to engage a forensic accountant, a man named Greer Kettering, who used to be with the SEC, to conduct the valuation." Reginald's face changed color. I watched it change. It went from the flushed, sweating color it had been when he had walked into my office to a kind of careful gray-white color that I had not previously seen on his face. He had known, at the moment Whitfield said the name Greer Kettering, what was about to happen. I had not known, at the moment Whitfield said the name Greer Kettering, what was about to happen. I had asked Whitfield to bring a forensic accountant in case the dissolution turned contentious. I had not asked Whitfield to bring a forensic accountant because I had suspected Reginald had been stealing from the company. I had not suspected that. I had been a man who, at 9:43 a.m. that Tuesday morning, had still believed that his business partner of 22 years had only betrayed him in one specific way. I had been wrong about that, too. I would not find out the full extent of how wrong I had been until Greer Kettering called me, 2 weeks later, on a Friday afternoon in late May, from his office in Raleigh. He would tell me, in that phone call, that he had completed his preliminary review of the company's financial records for the previous 5 years. He would tell me that Reginald Holcomb had been systematically misdirecting company funds through a network of 3 shell vendor companies registered in his cousin's name in Wilmington, to accounts that Reginald personally controlled. He would tell me that the total amount misdirected over the previous 5 years was approximately $1,840,000. He would tell me that approximately $760,000 of that money had been deposited, over the previous 29 months, into a joint money market account at a Charlotte bank that listed both Reginald Holcomb and Adrian Bromley as the account holders. I would not say anything for approximately 14 seconds after he told me that. I would then ask him whether he had documentation. He would tell me he had 4 banker's boxes of documentation. He would tell me that he believed the case rose to the level of federal wire fraud, that the involvement of my wife, both as a recipient of the misdirected funds and, potentially, as a knowing participant in the underlying scheme, meant that the appropriate federal contact was the FBI's white-collar crime unit, and that he was prepared with my authorization to walk the documentation over to the Charlotte field office that same afternoon. I would authorize him. He would walk the documentation over. The story of what happened in the months after the morning of May 12, 2026, is a story that is still unfolding. In court filings and in federal proceedings and in conversations I have been having with my two children about who their mother turned out to be and about who their father is going to be on the other side of it. I will tell you the operational summary. The FBI's Charlotte field office opened a formal white-collar investigation about 3 weeks after Greer Kettering walked his documentation across the lobby. Special Agent Beatrix Pelham, who was 42 years old and had been with the Bureau for the previous 14 years, became the lead investigator on the case. She interviewed me over the course of the following 2 months on 6 separate occasions. She interviewed Reginald twice. She interviewed Adrienne 3 times. The federal grand jury sitting in the Western District of North Carolina returned a sealed 31-count indictment against Reginald Holcomb in mid-August. The indictment was unsealed about 10 days later. Reginald was arrested at his home in Myers Park on a Wednesday morning in late August, in front of his own wife, Vivienne, who had not, by that point in the proceedings, been informed by Reginald of any of the events that had taken place on my front porch in mid-May. She had also not been informed, until that Wednesday morning, of the joint money market account at the Charlotte Bank. Vivienne filed for divorce from Reginald approximately 11 days after his arrest. I have not spoken with her personally since the events of that morning, but Whitfield Karras has told me, in confidence, that Vivienne's divorce attorney has been working closely with the federal prosecutors to ensure that the financial portion of her divorce proceeding reflects the full extent of the joint marital fraud, so that her settlement will be protected from federal forfeiture to the maximum legal extent. I hope she gets what she needs. She and I had eaten Thanksgiving dinner together for 18 of the previous 21 years. She had not, as far as I have been able to determine, had any knowledge of what her husband had been doing. She had been, like me, a person who had trusted somebody she should have been able to trust. Adrienne was not indicted in the initial wave of charges, but she received a target letter from the United States Attorney for the Western District of North Carolina about 6 weeks after Reginald's arrest. Her attorney is currently negotiating a non-prosecution agreement in exchange for her full cooperation against Reginald. The negotiation is ongoing. The terms of the agreement, if reached, will likely require her to forfeit her interest in the money market account, to provide testimony at Reginald's trial, and to pay restitution to the company in an amount to be determined. Our divorce was filed in mid-August. It was uncontested. Adrienne did not seek alimony. She did not have a meaningful basis to seek alimony because the income she had reported on our joint tax filings for the previous 8 years had been, in substantial part, the laundered proceeds of Reginald Holcomb's embezzlement. Her actual independent income, after the laundered funds were removed from the picture, was approximately $18,000 per year. She moved out of our house about 72 hours after the morning of May 12th. She has been living since then in a small one-bedroom apartment in a building near the airport. She has not been working as a marketing consultant. She has been working at a department store at South Park Mall, where she is selling cosmetics on commission. I have been told this by my daughter Saskia, who has been having quiet weekly phone calls with her mother on Sunday afternoons that I have not asked Saskia to describe to me. My children have been all right. Saskia is 19. She is in her sophomore year at the University of North Carolina at Charlotte, and she has continued to live in her dormitory at the university through all of this. She came home for the weekend after Reginald's arrest, and she sat at the kitchen table with me on a Saturday evening in early September. And she told me that she had not been surprised about her Uncle Reginald, because she had walked into our kitchen on a Sunday afternoon in February, about 3 months before any of this had come to light, by my own accounting, and had seen the way her mother and Reginald had been standing next to each other at the kitchen island, and had decided, at the time, that she had imagined what she had imagined. She had not imagined it. She had been 19 years old. She had wanted to be wrong. She had not been wrong. Crew is 16. He is a junior at Charlotte Country Day School. He has been living with me at our house since the morning Adrienne moved out. He has not, in the past 4 months, asked me directly about his mother. He has been quieter than he had been before. He has been spending more time in his room, with his guitar, learning songs by artists I do not recognize. He has been playing in the front yard occasionally when he thinks I am not watching. He looks like his mother when he plays. He does not know that he looks like his mother. I have decided not to tell him that he looks like his mother for a few more years. Bromley and Holcomb General Contractors was dissolved on the 1st of September. The forensic valuation, after deducting the misdirected funds and the federal restitution obligation, returned approximately $4.2 million to me as the majority shareholder. I have used a portion of those funds to start a new firm. The new firm is called Bromley Construction. It is a smaller firm than Bromley and Holcomb had been. It employs 11 people. 7 of those 11 are former Bromley and Holcomb employees who came with me. 4 are new hires. I have, in the 4 months since the new firm opened, bid on approximately 2/3 of the projects that Bromley and Holcomb would have bid on in the same period. I have won about half of them. It is enough. It is more than enough. It is a Sunday evening in late October. Crew is in his bedroom upstairs, doing his homework. Saskia is home from college for the weekend, and she is in the kitchen with me, helping me make a pot of chili from a recipe my mother used to make when my brother and I were the age that Crew is now. I have been making this chili on the 3rd Sunday of every month for the previous 9 years. I had been making it because my mother had taught me how to make it during the summer. She had been dying of pancreatic cancer in the small kitchen of the house I had grown up in Greensboro, when she had wanted to make sure that her grandchildren would know how to make the things she had not been going to be alive to make for them. Saskia has been making the chili with me on the 3rd Sunday of every month since she had been 10 years old. She had not, in the previous 9 years, missed a Sunday. She had been missing them, this fall, more than she had been keeping them, because she had been driving up to Charlotte from her dormitory every other weekend, since the morning her Uncle Reginald had been arrested in Myers Park, to make sure her father was not eating dinner alone. I have not asked her to stop driving up. I have not asked her to keep driving up. She has been deciding for herself. She has been deciding well. The Charlotte Observer is on the kitchen table beside me, folded open to the local news section. There is a small article on page 4 of the local news section. The article reports that Reginald Holcomb has reached a preliminary plea agreement in his federal case. The agreement, the framework for which was filed with the court the previous Thursday, will result, when the plea is formally entered later this winter, in a sentence of approximately 9 years in federal prison, with restitution of approximately $1.8 million to be paid to my company and to other affected parties. The article notes that Mr. Holcomb's wife filed for divorce after his arrest, that the divorce proceeding has been settled, and that Mrs. Holcomb has retained custody of their 3 children. The article does not mention me by name. It does not mention my wife by name. It does not mention the texts on a phone in a dark bedroom on a Tuesday morning in mid-May, or the white paper bag from a bakery on East Boulevard, or the silver BMW X5 backing slowly out of a driveway in South Charlotte at 7:45 a.m. in the gray morning light. It does not need to mention those things. I know what they were. That is enough. I am sitting at the kitchen table with my daughter, and the smell of my mother's chili is filling the kitchen the way it had filled my mother's kitchen when I was 16 years old, and Crew is upstairs in his bedroom doing homework that he will pretend he did not do when I ask him about it at dinner, and the phone on the counter next to the refrigerator is not lighting up with messages from anybody who is not supposed to be sending them. The truth had walked up my front porch at 7:41 a.m. on a Tuesday morning in mid-May, holding a small white paper bag from a bakery my wife had been ordering pastries from for the previous decade. The truth had been wearing a navy quarter-zip pullover. The truth had been my best friend. The truth was a worse man than I had ever known him to be. The truth was the price of 21 years of having trusted the wrong person. I had paid the price. I had paid it in the only currency I had. I am still paying it. I am closer to even than I was. I am not all the way there yet. I do not know if I ever will be. I know, sitting at the kitchen table with my daughter on a Sunday evening in late October, that I would not trade what I have for what I lost. I would not trade my daughter making chili with me for the marriage that had been in that bedroom at 7:46 a.m. on a Tuesday morning in mid-May. I would not trade crew upstairs in his bedroom for the company that had been called Bromley and Holcomb. I would not trade the small, quiet life I am rebuilding for the loud, comfortable life that had been built, in substantial part, on a lie. The price had been the price. I had paid it. I would pay it again. I do not want to ask you the usual question tonight. I do not want to ask you what you would do. I do not want to ask you to like, share, subscribe. I want to ask you something else. I want to ask you to sit for 1 quiet minute before you scroll to the next video and think about one person in your own life, a friend, a brother, a business partner, a neighbor, who has been close enough to you for long enough that you have trusted them without ever needing to verify anything about that trust. I want you to think about their name. I want you to picture their face. I want you to remember the last time the two of you laughed together about something that nobody else in the world would have found funny. Now, I want you to ask yourself, quietly, just to yourself, with nobody else watching, whether you have ever, at any point in your relationship with that person, ignored a small thing that did not quite add up, a look between them and your spouse that lasted half a second too long, a receipt at the office that did not match the invoice it was attached to, a trip out of town that they explained twice, a phone call that ended the moment you walked into the room. I am not asking you because I think your friend is bad. I am asking you because 4 months ago, I was sitting at my kitchen table in South Charlotte at 6:54 a.m. on a Tuesday morning in mid-May, drinking a cup of coffee that I had made for a man I had already decided to confront, and I was thinking about every small thing of mine that I had ever ignored. There had been 4 of them. I had remembered all 4 by the time he had rung the doorbell at 7:41 a.m. I had decided, on the front porch at 7:45 a.m., that I would never ignore the 5th. I want you to make the same decision tonight for yourself before you scroll. Then, if you have the energy, drop 1 word in the comments below. 1 word, whatever the word is, I will read every single one.